Big Liz was a plantation slave, and her master was probably a smuggler or spy. Though there were no silver war barrels fought on the eastern shore, it's believed that the Confederate Army stashed a good bit of its money on the southern, sympathetic farms of the eastern shore. Many of the African American slaves spied for the Union Army, turning in known keepers of Confederate money and passing information on to the Union about the comings and goings of the wealthy landowners. Many believe that Big Liz was a spy for the Union and that her master was a keeper of Confederate funds whose hiding place had been discovered. Some believe that he knew Big Liz was a traitor. In a plot to switch the location of the treasure and get rid of the snitch, the master took Big Liz along with him into the swamp to rebury his stash of money. Or no, stash of cash. He asked her to help him bury the money and then pointed to a sapling, asking her to plant it over the burial site to identify the location. When Big Liz bent down to bury the sapling, the master whacked off her head and left her there to rot. Ever since then, people have seen strange lights in the swamp, and others tell of seeing Big Liz herself holding her head in her hand coming out of the swamp, calling them, motioning to them to come follow her, and she'll lead them to her master's money. But those who follow her don't return. They disappear into the midst of Greenbrier Swamp, never to be seen again. The Kersey Bridge crosses the Transquaking River near Greenbrier Swamp. This bridge is where many report to have seen Big Liz. The locals say that if you drive your car up to the bridge at midnight, honk 3 times, flash your headlights twice, and then turn off the car, your car won't start again, and then Big Liz will emerge from the swamp, red eyes glowing through the mist, and she'll motion for you to follow her, but follow at your own peril. Many have followed, none have returned. The Old Jail Museum in Leonardtown, Maryland, located on the grounds of the former Leonardtown Jail, is known for its haunted history and claims of Indian spirits. The jail, which was built in 1876 and operated until 1945, is said to be haunted by the spirits of former prisoners and potentially by Native American spirits due to the area's history. The museum, which retains its original cells and jailkeepers' quarters, have a grim history and is a popular spot for paranormal enthusiasts. Okay, so it took me a while to sorry. It took me a while to find this. So let's just get started. Jim Wilson was taken by a mob from the Caroline County Jail and lynched in 1862. Several years after the event in 1895, the Baltimore Sun reported that prior to the series of events leading up to his killing, Wilson had always been regarded as one of the best blank in the country. Wait, how old is the Baltimore Sun? Jesus, that's a long time. Anyway, on October 30th, 1862, an 8-year-old girl, the daughter of Edgar Plummer, was found dead in the woods of Caroline County. Edgar Plummer was a delegate representing Caroline County in the Maryland House of Delegates. A letter written to editors of a Denton, Maryland newspaper and published in the Baltimore Sun stated that it is impossible to describe the effect of this dark and unnatural deed upon the popular mind. Jim Wilson was arrested on suspicion and taken to the body, where he reportedly confessed to the crime. The Denton letter to the editor, signed by Gallatin, stated that Wilson anticipated that he would be hung without a trial. The letter writer also claims almost certainly fraudulently that Wilson had told one or two gentlemen that there was a good deal of talk among some of the colored people in his neighborhood respecting the present and prospective position of his race growing out of the present condition of national affairs, and hinted that the appropriation of white women for the lives of black men was a subject entering into their vague calculations. Sorry. The day after the girl's funeral, her name may have been Emma or Edith. Newspaper accounts differ. A mob formed outside the county jail. Gallatin asserted that there were 300 people in the crowd that night. The sheriff offered little to no resistance, and the mob swarmed the jail, breaking into Wilson's cell with an axe. Jim Wilson was hanged near the jail and shot by the crowd. The violence stretched into the night as the mob took Wilson's body to an African American church, where his corpse was again hanged. The Denton letter states that some in the crowd proposed to place Wilson's body in the church and burn the church. This was ultimately rejected by the majority. In the end, Wilson's body was burned on a riverbank. No trial or jury of inquest was assembled to find members of the lynch mob. While no attempt had been made to find and punish members of the lynch mob, 5 years later, Richard Greenwell, alternatively known as Richard Greenlee, was declared a member of the lynching party by newspapers after his death. Reportedly, he was one of the men who broke into the jail to lynch Wilson and was the person who disposed of Wilson's body. The newspapers described Greenwell as having cut and carved him as though he would beef, and then roasted and burned to ashes the pieces. Greenwell, like many other people in Lynch mobs, decided to take a trophy of the murder. He cut off the right hand of Wilson and preserved it as a trophy, which he brought back to Delaware. 5 years after this mob violence, Richard Greenwell would die by drowning in the Nanticoke River at Seaford, Delaware. His role in the lynching was never mentioned until after his self-exit. The lynching of Jim Wilson was mentioned in newspapers over 30 years later in 1895 as a parallel case when a girl named Sally Dean was murdered in Caroline County. Marshall Price, a man who was most likely white, was convicted of the crime and sentenced to death, but a mob of masked men stormed the jail and hanged Price 3 days before his date of execution.